Thank you for joining us. I'm here with my colleague, my cohort, my partner in crime, Kelly Lewis. Again, we're back with another episode of the webinar series that we host here at John G. Ullman Associates called The Art of Personal Finance. And tonight I am extremely excited to bring this topic to you all, Airbnb, hosting the world in your home. The reason I'm so excited is because the topic is incredibly time relevant. It is an up and coming name. And Kelly, as you and I have been talking about this presentation, Airbnb has kind of become synonymous with home rental, sort of like Xerox has become synonymous with making a photocopy of a document, if you will. Hosting people in your home or renting homes has been around quite a long time, and Airbnb has certainly revolutionized that. And I can't think of two better people. Yes, I'm sort of self-promoting here a bit. I can't think of two better people to cover this topic tonight, because you have a reformed Airbnb host, so to speak, and you have a current Airbnb host. And as we talk, you all will find out who fits those bills. Before we get started, we want to take care of some logistics and some housekeeping items. We have a disclaimer. The information discussed in this webinar is current as of the date noted and is for informational purposes only, and does not contend to address the financial objectives, situation, or specific needs of any individual investor. Any information is for illustrative purposes only and is not intended to serve as investment, legal, or tax advice, since the availability and effectiveness of any strategy is dependent upon your individual facts and circumstances. Results will vary, and no suggestion is made about how any specific solution or strategy will perform in reality. So Kelly, here we are. Before you jump in, I happened to look up some statistics about Airbnb.
All right.
And Airbnb is such an incredible organization. They recently went public, so now they are a publicly traded company. But did you know that Airbnb accounted for 19% of the US lodging market in 2018?
No, I didn't.
That's an incredible number. And Marriott, everyone probably knows the Marriott brand of hotels and so on. They're one of Airbnb's biggest competitors, and they actually created and launched their own home rentals site similar to Airbnb to compete against them directly. One more statistic that I found incredibly interesting, that the projection right now is that by 2022, 45.6 million people will use Airbnb to book rentals, and that will be up from 41.1 million in 2019. Obviously, I'm skipping over 2020, the year that it was. So interesting statistics of the growth that is projected for Airbnb.
Those are really great statistics, Jason. I didn't know any of that. That's awesome. All right. So with that, I guess my turn to take it away.
Take it away, Kelly. Lead us into this.
All right. So while we get started, I'll give you a little hint. As Jason mentioned, we both have done or are doing Airbnb. We have very different types of properties that we worked with. Now we'll get into more stories and things like that. I rented a 2-bedroom residential home in Corning, and Jason, on the other hand, is renting a condo near the beach. So very different types of properties with different types of clientele. So what I'm telling you this for is that whether you're renting like a room in your house or your $2 million lake house, Airbnb could be the right platform for you. If you don't believe me, here are some quick examples of the kind of things that people rent out on Airbnb. The first thing we have, you can rent a bubble to stay in on Airbnb. You can also rent just a general small tree house. Did you know you could rent an airplane? Oh, grounded airplane, of course, they don't want you flying it away, to stay in. You can also rent just a tent that is hanging in the trees, which I think is kind of cool. You can even rent just a cave. Not sure how much this is or where this is, but yeah, you can go caveman for the weekend. And you can even rent a potato. Yes, indeed, a potato. So it is not out of the realm of possibility to even just rent your home or a room in your home, because people do rent all kind of things. So while we're going to be talking about this presentation is going to give you some of the starting tips to start building your Airbnb empire. So today, our big topics for discussion are going to be split into like 4 or 5 categories. We're going to talk first about how you can prepare your home to host, the steps you need to do. Some of it may seem obvious. Some of it is more behind the scenes that Jason and I have learned by doing this ourselves. We're also going to talk about staying safe and secure as a host, whether or not you are going to be in the house while you rent it, or even just protecting your house if you're not there, which is part of the next one, protecting yourself and your home. And then we're also going to talk about the hidden costs of renting your home on Airbnb and what that would mean for you.
And these are all great areas that we're going to cover. Again, really excited to cover this because Kelly, you and I have so many different anecdotal stories. So while we have a great agenda, we're probably likely to go left, right, and around with some of our stories, which should be a lot of fun.
So for the first thing we are going to talk about is expectations versus realities. Now, when I started renting, that's a picture of my old house. I've actually moved since then, but it was a cute little bungalow on the north side of Corning. And my plan was to sort of rent it on the weekends because I'd often go stay with families anyway. So I was like, okay, I'll just make a little extra money, get a couple renters in the summer, and that was that. So I expected it to be this really simple process. And when I put my house on Airbnb, it blew up. I tell you, my whole summer was booked in a matter of a few weeks. And I hadn't known some of what you can do to protect yourself and prevent that, which we'll get into on the next slide. So all of a sudden, I basically had to move out of my house for the summer. So there are expectations that you're looking at when you're doing this, and there are also the truth of what renting is like. Some of those things include the fact that you're inviting strangers into your home. You don't know them at all, really. And though the app will verify them with licenses or passports, you don't know who they are and what they're doing in your home. So I've actually talked to a couple of our clients who have asked about my experience, and they say they'd be really uncomfortable inviting strangers into their home. So that's something to consider. The next one is time commitment. This one is huge. I never realized personally that how much time it would take to run an Airbnb empire. I think Jason would probably jump in and say the same thing, right?
Yeah, so it's interesting because Kelly, your situation was, I've got this empty home. Why don't I rent it? And we were approaching it really just the opposite. We went looking really with the investment in mind. Buy a place where someplace that's near and dear to our heart. It's something from our past. And so we went in with some expectations. Hey, we're going to be a landlord now in some regards. But Airbnb, the setup, makes that easy to manage a property if you do things the right way, and you have to be thorough. And so we already went in with that, inviting strangers in. We knew that's what we were going in for, as well as some, using the property on our own as well.
Yeah, definitely. And then, just being aware that taking time, again, Jason and I managed it differently here. My home, when I started, it wasn't supposed to be a full-time big thing. So that I was like, I'll take care of the landscaping, I'll take care of all the cleaning myself. And I found myself having to put way too much time. I mean, I hate mowing the lawn personally. I'll do it once every 3 weeks, but to keep up appearances for my house, I had to mow it like twice a week some of the time. So that got to be a little bit much for me. It was more of a time commitment than I expected. And the last one I have is life interruptions. Now I have a fun story for you here. With this, anything can happen. If you don't hire a property manager to manage the property for you and the listing, and you do it yourself, you're essentially a landlord on call. I had to go in once the water heater just broke and all the water came on the basement floor. So I had to get a water heater replaced in an emergency. One person found a dead bird in the house that had been flying around and then it died. So I had to go in and scoop up a dead bird. It's pretty gross. The last one is actually kind of a funny story. I had the date wrong on my calendar when the people were checking in, and they showed up at the house and it was locked and not ready for them. And I had them coming a day later, and I hadn't even cleaned yet. So I ended up having to take half a vacation day at work because I had to run over to my house, send the people checking in to dinner, apologize, and clean the house myself because I wasn't prepared for them to check in for another 24 hours. There's definitely some interruptions in your normal life routine, and you have to be prepared for that as well.
That's all great information, Kelly. And again, I think the difference is, am I doing this just to fill a house and maybe generate a little income, or am I doing this as sort of an investment or a business or something like that? And we kind of went into that with just that little bit different mindset. So when where we were buying, we're buying into sort of a resort area. As you mentioned early on, it's a beach town.
Mhm.
And if you're in that environment, you'll find out that there are a lot of people that do this, and there are businesses that have built around this home rental, and it's only gotten more robust in terms of the services that you can find. So our property is 6 hours away from us, and yeah, we've had a few hiccups, which we'll get into some of those stories as well. But we really actually had an okay, smooth ride.
Mhm.
The first thing, as soon as we knew we were buying and we had the agreed upon property, we went looking for services. Because again, we went in with a mindset, hey, we're buying this, we're going to use it once in a while, but we are going to rent this out. So we found a cleaning team. We were on Airbnb already getting our host site set up. We were setting the rules and restrictions around that. We had started making a list of other providers like HVAC and heating contractors and things like that. So we had sort of generated this list, like this is a business mindset, much different maybe than you were kind of going into it, so
Mhm.
that we had those at the ready, kind of reducing the life interruptions. And we were thinking very, very systematically about this. I'll tell you my quick key story is when you are setting up an Airbnb, especially in a resort town like we have, you have to start thinking, okay, how am I going to let these people in? And how am I going to secure it from potential other people who have already stayed there and want to come back and when they shouldn't be there? So we have a keypad door lock on this door, and then we've got some key lock boxes just inside so they can enter a code in those and get a key to go into the next door, and then when they get in, and it's this whole key system. This is what I'm talking about in terms of business aspects. So if you're going into this not just as the random renter or host of your own home and setting it up as a business, there is a list of things that you really need to address so that you are limiting those life interruptions. So I would tell you, say from a cleaning standpoint, if you're not going with a property manager from a cleaning perspective or having an on-site person, ask that person what other services they're willing to perform. If an appliance maybe is on the fritz, are they willing to call? Do they provide maybe handyman services where they have a handyman on staff or one contracted? And so depending on what your situation is going to be and where you are, there are economies built around these rental situations, and it actually becomes very easy. And then I'll make one more point. I agree with you in terms of the calendar filling up very quickly. And we weren't ready for that. We had listed it on Airbnb, I want to say in February. And by the end of March, we were completely booked for the whole summer. A couple of bookings, if you don't manage this carefully, I will say that the renters got a very, very cheap vacation.
Yeah, and those are great points, and looking at it as an investment rather than like me not knowing what I was doing going into it and not knowing what it would entail, is getting all those services on call and ready for you just in case something happens. And that's a very great point, is to add that sort of thing to your list rather than having to scramble when something happens. So the next thing we're going to talk about, once you've sort of set your mindset to having an Airbnb, which can be really fun as well, you have to get into how you prepare your home for guests. And this is setting up on the Airbnb app as well as getting your actual home and your property ready. So I would say that the Airbnb app or the website, even if you would prefer to do it on your computer, it's pretty intuitive. There are definitely things that you'll learn as you go through it, such as if you look down the list a bit, Jason can tell you, I'll have him tell you a quick story about setting prices to what you want it to be. So why don't you jump into that, Jason?
So yeah, I alluded to that just a moment ago. So my story on that is where we're at in the beach town. August, July and August are the hottest months to rent, not just in terms of temperature, but also, for people for demand. Setting prices, Airbnb actually has a price setting artificial intelligence built into their website, into their app. Okay. So what you do with Airbnb is you can set a minimum price and a maximum price. And then based on demand and searching in that city, they will raise and lower your prices, plus what other properties are getting booked, right? All these different variables are fitting into the mix. Airbnb's purpose is not to get you the most money possible. So if you go in with knowing that, then you'll understand how you need to operate. Airbnb wants bookings, and their statistics run on bookings, like I gave right at the top of the presentation. So they don't care about what price they book it at, just as long as it's booked. Well, we had the first 2 weeks in August. Again, July and August are the best months to be booking a beach town rental. At least 50% of the going rate they booked at. And it was an overnight hiccup from the way I explain it. I went to bed one night checking our calendar. I woke up the next morning to 2 new bookings, and 50% of what the other 2 weeks in August were booked for. Because what Airbnb had done is bookings had slowed down at that point, and we're going to drop the price. So people out there looking said, wow, what a great place to book for this price. So what I will tell you to do is set your min, set your max, understand the market a little bit. Now, how do you get to understand the market if you're going in as more of an investor mindset and maybe you don't really know the market? There's a great resource out there called AirDNA. AIRDNA. It's a website. It will cost you money, and you pay by city that you want access to. But what this program does is it gives you all sorts of statistics and pricing structure that you should be setting, and it will look out a full 12 months. And if you use this, then you stand a better chance, again, from an investor mindset, of maximizing your cap rate or your rate of return by actively adjusting the prices. Don't necessarily pay attention to what Airbnb is doing. Use your own intuition and use a resource like an AirDNA.
Absolutely. Yep. That's a great resource. And if you are renting in a local area that you can always increase the prices yourself. When I was renting my home in Corning, I would almost double the prices for Glass Fest weekend and for the Wine Glass Marathon, because I knew that those were going to be, and race weekends for walk-ins, because I knew that those were going to be big weekends and I could make some good money off of those. So setting your own pricing is important. Also setting your calendar. You can block dates that you don't want to host. So if you're Jason and you know what week you're going to your beach house, you want to block those weeks well in advance. So you can set your calendar so you're only renting a little bit at a time, or that the whole thing's open. You want to make sure that you coordinate calendars with your service teams, the cleaners, landscapers, so that they're aware of when they need to come in the house. Another important one is to establish the rules for your space. So you have to decide whether you want smoking or no smoking, whether you have pets, what people have to bring, whether they can have parties, if there's a minimum age, all things to consider on who you want in your home. And then Airbnb will also send you tips on occasion that'll say, get more bookings by doing this, so that you can always continue to update your booking to keep up with the changes in the app.
Another interesting story on that, Kelly, that just happened to us. Great story. I mean, this is a great session because we can just tell these stories, and this is a good and a bad story. It's good because we got a booking. It's bad because we were in the process of trying not to take bookings. So we have actually decided at this point, having gone through a season with a beach place, that we are probably going to turn this over to a property manager. Now, if you follow the same process that we did, where we wanted to run this on our own at least 1 year and really understand kind of what goes on, but then maybe turn it over to professional management. Property managers typically will not take your existing reservations. Okay. They won't manage those reservations. They won't, if the tenant calls and something needs to be fixed, they're not helping because they didn't do the vetting. They didn't do the advertising. They didn't do the pricing. Our intention was to shut ours down or look like we shut our whole calendar down. Be very careful. If you only shut down like we did the rest of 2021, there's a setting in Airbnb that allows people to book out as much as a year even. So be very careful and watch that setting. We actually got a reservation in July for July of 2022, and we weren't ready. Who's looking for a vacation a year out? But it happened. So just that's another setting in the calendars. It's not just about blocking and the prices and things like that, but how far out are you going to let people book?
That's a great point. Once you're ready and you have this all set up and your app's ready to go, you actually have to get your property ready. So some basic things: you want to get your home as clean as possible. Airbnb is getting to be more and more in such that people are expecting hotel type quality of places to stay. You can be what's called a super host, which means you provide a certain level of services, and products at your home, as well as it getting sparkly clean and good reviews. The other thing you want to keep in mind is to fix any hazards. So that basement railing that you've been meaning to fix for 5 years that or that creaky step that is half broken that to step over, things like that, you want to get those fixed because they could be a liability to someone who doesn't know the house. You also want to make sure your home is equipped for guests. So there may be some things that you want to buy to supply your home with everything that a guest may need, down to new linens and blankets and pillows. And then leaving a detailed instruction manual or a guidebook, which is always fun to leave suggestions for, like where to eat, where to shop, what you can do, as well as any local emergency numbers or how to get in touch with you in an emergency, as well as simple things like turning on the TV and changing the thermostat. I found that it's very surprising some people who just were not able to deal with the technology, and that they would be texting me and calling me about things that they couldn't get to work. The more detailed your instruction manual, the better there. The last one would be to safeguard your valuables. My initial thing to say would be don't leave any valuables in your house. Like me, if it was your home that you're renting and you're renting just a room in your space, I would put everything in one room and I would double lock it so that nobody could get in. But my real valuables, I would take with me every time I left. So that would be something to do as well.
Great ideas here. If you're doing this again with a second property or an investment property, the advice is pretty much the same. Usually if you've been a renter through Airbnb, you'll notice that a lot of people have what are called owner's closets, and those are locked. And we do the same thing. We have an owner's closet. Our on-site person, who is our cleaner but also our on-call person, she has a key as well to that owner's closet because we keep cleaning supplies in there as well. And we keep a lot of things. One of the ways that we set up our property, again, because it's not our home, we didn't have it filled with a bunch of personal property or belongings or valuables to begin with. So the things that we focused on was, how are we welcoming guests, right? Like when someone comes in and they walk into your place, I mean, obviously, if you're running this like a business, you'd love nothing more than repeat guests that are good guests. And because they know the place, they'll take care of your place, they'll treat it like their own. So we do little things, right? Kelly, you had said, instruction manual. The way that we're setting up our Airbnb empire, as you call it, is we're using it to tell our story from our past. We've always enjoyed traveling. We think we found some real gems of places that aren't really top of mind for people. And so that's what we're trying to build. And I don't think I've said this. Our property's in Ocean City, Maryland. We have deep ties. We love Ocean City, Maryland. We spent some of our younger adult years there. And so it's not always the first place that people think of when they say beach towns. Usually it's maybe Outer Banks, or they're going to Florida or something like that. And so what we're doing is we're building a story behind our properties of why we love it, and some of our favorite places in Ocean City. Because again, we worked in Ocean City, we spent time in Ocean City, and the reviews we've gotten back on that have been wonderful. It's thank you so much. We wouldn't have known about this little place had it not been for your local understanding and things like that. So not just how do you get into the Wi-Fi and turn on the TV, but really help them understand all these little gems that they're not going to really know. And that I think that's what helps build, if you have the investor mindset. We also leave them little welcome bags when they show up for their stay with starter toiletries. You can order all this stuff on Amazon, so they get a starter hotel size of bar soap and shampoo and conditioner and things like this as well. So if you're approaching this from, I'm going to invest and this is going to be a business for me or a side hustle or something, think about those amenities that you would like to show up to.
Yeah, absolutely. Those are great points. Yeah, part of the fun is making the home how you want it to come across. And that's with mine, I would leave a bottle of wine for older renters. And mine was a pet friendly place. So if they were bringing a dog with them, I would always leave them a nice dog toy or a dog treat for their dog when they got there. So, and I had a lot of fun sort of customizing the experience. I got to be not really an event planner, but sort of an interior decorator on the side. So it's definitely a lot of fun to see if what your guests might be expecting. And Amazon, absolutely, you can get anything on Amazon. One other thing that I just thought to note here is the first step before you do any of this is you have to check your local rules for whether or not you can even rent your home. Some cities and towns don't even allow it. Corning does allow it, though right before I stopped, I did it for about 2.5 years. Right before I stopped, I got a notice from the code enforcement. They told me that based on my listing, my house was not set up how it needed to be. That by keeping one of the rooms locked, it became a boarding house, and that those are not allowed in Corning. So they essentially told me that I have to unlock my master bedroom door because the guests have to have access to the entire house or it's a fire hazard. So there are state rules and regulations and local rules and regulations that you'll want to check and see, A, if you're even allowed to rent your home, and then B, if you are, what are you allowed to do with it? Can you rent one room? Can you lock rooms? Or do you have to rent the entire thing? All right, which also kind of brings us into the next part of this presentation, staying safe and secure. This is both for you and your property. And one of the things that Jason and I were chatting about the other day is that if you can, get to know your guests before they come. Airbnb has an automatic booking feature, which a lot of people like because they'll just go on and book it and then it's done. But you can also set it that they have to reach out to you to request to book, which is what I always did, because I would like to find out who was coming and why they were coming. I didn't really want any big bachelorette parties at my house either. And knowing that I was only renting enough space for 2 to 4 people, there shouldn't have been any big parties. So it's important to get to know who's coming to your house if possible. That way you can also sort of customize the experience and feel more comfortable that they're there. I also let my neighbors know that people would be coming and going that weren't me so that they didn't get surprised. And then I also let them know that if there were any noise issues or anything like that, that they should call me directly and I would take care of it. Locking off limit areas, again, like Jason said, a lot of people will have owner's closets. I would lock my master bedroom. So you can do that in some places, but again, just check the rules to make sure you can. A home security system. This is good, an outside camera at least, so you can see people coming and going. My check-in was based on a code, and I would change the code for each person that came. If you do have cameras inside the house, you legally have to let guests know that they are there, and you have to potentially give them access to shut them off. I actually rented a home only once that had cameras in it, and they let me know. And I actually went into the house and I turned the camera system off, and then I turned the cameras around too, because I was just like, who knows if they have remote access. And it can be a little weird feeling, but as long as you let people know that there are cameras there, they are allowable. And the last one is to only use the Airbnb app to conduct your business. Once you step outside of using that app, Airbnb will not protect you from anything that happens. So, a couple people asked me if they could pay me outside of Airbnb through Venmo or something like that. And, I just had to tell them, no, everything has to be recorded through the app or you're not protected. So it's important to just keep business in the app.
Yeah, so important on that last one. I've got a couple of other quick stories. one thing that I would tell people is set yourself a process for check-in and check-out. And what we do is I've got a standard message that I send 2 to 3 days before people are checking in. And, it's, here's how you get in, here's the code for this door, here's how you get the key to the next one, and so on. And again, this is just security. So doing business through the Airbnb app, I will tell you, I was contacted by a tenant recently saying, hey, it was like a Tuesday and they were checking in on a Saturday. Hey, we're going to be checking in. Can you send the instructions? Well, I don't know the person's cell phone number, and ours is certainly out there for emergencies. And they texted me, said, hey, our process is we'll send you the check-in instructions 2 to 3 days before your check-in day, and we'll use the Airbnb app. So important. It may seem easy just to send that message in, but do not do it, because I don't know if that's really them. I may give them check-in instructions and codes and keys to get in, and it's not even really them. And there's so many spam calls and spam texts going on right now. So do all your business through the Airbnb app. When you're thinking about locks and security, this is one thing, maybe I'm a little over obsessive about it, but one of the cool things right now is these coded door locks that are operated by Wi-Fi that you can actually change from a long ways away. We opted not to do that for a reason. Our place is on a coast. Coasts get hurricanes. Hurricanes knock out electricity. And guess what? Then no one's getting in and out. So we use the old school keypad. And what we did is with the keypads, you can program in and remove codes. So what we did for this summer is we gave the same code to every tenant that was coming in, and we'll go down at the end of the season and we'll remove that code. So that way, someone who might want to come back off season or next summer or something like that. And there are certainly different ways to manage this. This was just our way. So quick tip, we gave the same code to everybody. We'll go down the end of the season. We'll change all of those codes so no one can get in. And again, we're booked solid. So if an old tenant showed up, they're going to meet the next party that's right there. And that's not going to go well.
Definitely. So Jason, we did have a question come in for you. So let's jump into that. What are the challenges of owning an investment property when you're 6 hours away? And would you recommend people making their first investment property purchase in an out-of-town location or in town?
Let's start with challenges of being far away. Kelly mentioned it earlier that you're on call 24/7, and people are understanding. But it goes back to before you even open up your property, if you're going to be that far away, before you open up that property for rental, have your team in place. We had a cleaning team in place that had a handyman on site, and it was a local person who had been in the Ocean City area for a long, long time. We had 2 sessions with her in person so that we could get to know her a bit and her business, and she was committed to helping us in any way, not just clean our place and the handyman, but as an example, our air conditioning wasn't working. And on a Saturday, she said, call these people. They work on Saturdays. This is what they do. They know that this is rental season and they're here working. People were there within 15 minutes. The biggest thing is being able to respond to tenant issues when you're that far away, and how are you going to do it? The appliance breaks down, they can't get in. Have your team on site that can do that for you and that you trust. Now we did have one tenant issue. Kelly talks about safe and secure. Another story I'll share, people will go on and create profiles to rent a place and then send their high school and college age kids down to party at your place for the week. And your neighbors don't enjoy that, certainly, and nor do you as the property owner. So goes back to, what are the risks of owning it so far away? Make sure you're utilizing some of the tools that Airbnb allows, or that you set up, like Kelly mentioned, check a passport, who's going to be there, things like this. Talk to your neighbors. Our neighbor was huge in that situation, contacted us and said, hey, there's no adults here. You're going to want to deal with this. But then that goes back to the team you have on site. What are the local laws in Ocean City? There's a 10 p.m. noise ordinance law, and we could contact the police, and for a donation or fee, as they call it, they would go and remove them from the property if we asked them to do so, because they were making too much noise past the noise ordinance. So would I recommend you do it? It's what is your tolerance for risk? Okay, we know the area. We know the town. We got to know our on-site person, and so we've been fairly comfortable doing it. If I could do it again, sure. Having one close where I could go and do it, take care of things, put eyes on it, that would make me feel more comfortable. But you sort of have to have your investment strategy in place. And ours was a storyline, and our story around travel kind of started in Ocean City. So it's what risk and time can you allocate?
Yeah, and I think those are great points. And I think like attending presentations like this and talking to people who own investment properties or vacation homes that they rent sometimes, and learning some of the catchfalls and the things that you need to do to prepare that you may not think off the top of your head. If you are prepared going into it, an investment property further away is fine, because you'll prepare yourself for it. Having a close one, absolutely. It gives you the freedom to run to the house if you need to, but just take the time to do the research and find out what you should be doing, and talk to some professionals or some people with experience, and see what their recommendations are.
Yeah, and we wouldn't, after going through, we're almost through the main rental season. Like I said, our decision is likely that we're moving our property over to a property manager, which, relieves us of a lot of our time and then allows us more comfort of owning a property that far away.
All right, so the next part to protecting your home and yourself is insurance. We won't spend too long on this because it's probably the most boring part of this conversation, but I just wanted to give you guys a little background about how insurance works with Airbnb. So Airbnb provides two types of insurances. One is called the Host Guarantee Program, and the other is called the Host Protection Insurance. The Host Guarantee Program provides protection for up to $1 million to a host for damages to a covered property, in the rare event that the damages exceed a security deposit, or if there is no security deposit on the property. What it doesn't cover is cash that you may have in the house, securities, collectibles, jewelry, or damages by pets or to your pets, and any personal liability. So this is one of the things, you step back again, and this is why we recommend you remove those types of things from the house, is that because it's not covered by Airbnb. This also does not replace homeowners insurance through your through your personal insurance brokers. So, and I'll jump into that in a minute. The host protection insurance also provides primarily liability coverage up to $1 million in the occurrence that there is an event of a third-party claim of bodily injury or property damage related to an Airbnb stay. So this is more for if something happens to your guests or their property versus your own. So again, what it doesn't cover is any sort of intentional acts where the liability is not the result of an accident, or any sort of defamation or slander against the property. And it also just doesn't cover general property issues such as mold or bed bugs or pollution. It also does not cover accidents or auto accidents that may have occurred on the property. While there is good protection through Airbnb, you also want to look into getting home sharing coverage through your insurance broker. One of the main reasons to do this is because if something happened at your home, even if while you were there, so let's throw Jason under the bus here. So let's say he's at his condo and he burns the entire building down of all 4 condos, but it wasn't a renter who did it. If they find out that he was renting on Airbnb and didn't have the proper type of coverage, that gives them reason to drop Jason from the coverage. And then he all of a sudden has this entire 4 set of condos he has to pay for because his insurance may find a reason to drop them. So if you're not covered properly, the insurance doesn't have to pay you. More and more insurances these days cover, at first it was really hard to find home sharing insurance. Mine was through Liberty Mutual. Jason has one through a local broker in Ocean City.
That's right.
And I think more and more are doing home sharing riders these days, or short-term rental riders that are pretty easy to just add to the property. So it's important to have it even if you think you're covered by Airbnb.
Yeah, Kelly, as you mentioned, like I said, whole economies are being built around this phenomenon. We had a local insurance company that I called, and they said, you get a choice of two policies. It was as if they knew I was going to call, but as soon as I said, we're going to rent the home and list it on Airbnb, they literally gave me two choices. It's package A or package B, and one was higher cost but higher coverage, and the other was lower cost, lower. We went the higher coverage route, and I will tell you that it is a must for everybody listening before you go into this. If we are in a different state, we live in New York as our residence, our insurance is through New York, but our Ocean City residence is through Ocean City broker. Check with your local state, your local umbrella provider to see if they can list that on your umbrella policy. It's so important. You need an umbrella liability coverage because $1 million isn't going to cut it. Ours was made that call. If we get this coverage, can we also list it on our New York umbrella? The answer was yes. We're fully covered.
Which leads right into your next slide.
Yeah, so we're talking about protection, and like Kelly said, there, first level is sort of insurance, but there's a couple of other layers of protection you can add. Let's tackle the big one first, setting up an LLC. So we did this when we bought our property. We didn't do it first, we did it after the fact. We set up an LLC. Now, why is that? And that's a common question in real estate investing world. It is because of the way the business laws are written, and my attorney friend Kelly can opine probably further on law than I can, but LLCs provide a layer of protection from your personal property, your personal assets. And why is that? Because they cannot go through your business to get to your personal assets. Okay, so what you are doing is forming a business around your rental property. Does that mean you can't use it yourself if you put it into an LLC? No, that's not what that means. Kelly will talk about that in a little bit. But it does mean that you've provided this additional layer of protection that if there is a liability issue and let's say the case is for far more than the insurance coverage you have, they're not going to be able to reach through and get to your personal assets. So we did that just because we wanted not only the umbrella and the condo coverage, we also wanted the additional layer of protection. And these are pretty simple to set up. I don't recommend you doing it on your own. I recommend using an attorney that you can talk through. This is what we want to do. And I'm glad I did, and I'll tell you why. Obviously, Kelly, you and I have exposure really from the tax world. You have more exposure from the legal world than I do. But in talking with my attorney, if we had done a single member LLC, my wife wouldn't have been happy because she would have no longer owned the property. She would no longer own the condo. I would have been the single owner of this LLC, and that wouldn't have went over well with my wife. So we had to do a partnership, but it's still an LLC. So again, talk to an attorney who can walk you through the steps in the process, setting up the LLC, setting up the operating agreement, getting your EIN or your tax reporting number, and then transferring the property if you don't do it up front, but putting the property, retitling in the name of the LLC. And then the last thing, real quick, Airbnb provides a security deposit feature. There's no questions asked here, just do it. Require the security deposit feature. There is a process that if you need to make a claim, I'm telling you right now, take pictures and save your receipts if you have to fix things. We had the scenario where the high school or college age kids showed up, partied pretty hard in our condo. Nothing too terrible, just a lot of extra cleaning. But if there was some serious damage, you need pictures and you need the receipts to be able to submit to Airbnb to collect on that security deposit.
Yeah, absolutely. And the benefit is that they'll get the security deposit back pretty quickly if nothing needs to be replaced. It also, with them having to pay it, I think generally just ensures that they're more respectful of the property that they're in.
Correct.
So with that, and we'll kind of talk a little bit more about the taxes part of this and the legality of the LLCs. I wanted to talk a little bit about the hidden costs of Airbnb. And we had a question come in, very good question that sort of goes hand in hand with this. So I'll read it for everybody and then I will answer it. The question is, do you budget for wear and tear items like carpet, furniture, and appliances, etc.? So with Airbnb, one of the things you'll see on this list right in the middle is taxes. It is a Schedule E or Schedule C for taxes for Airbnb rentals, depending on if it's part of a larger business scheme or if it's just part of a rental property. And so you can deduct expenses off of that, like mortgage payments, property taxes, maintenance, repairs, property management, lots of things. I won't list them all. And then the net amount is what you pay taxes on. So the question, do you budget for wear and tear in the apartment or the condo? The answer is yes. You kind of have to. You have to be prepared to replace things at a moment's notice, or if somebody spills a bottle of red wine, you have to be ready to replace that white fluffy carpet you have or that couch cushion. But one of the things that I would do to help reduce the tax liability of my Airbnb is I pretty much took all of my proceeds from Airbnb, my net profit, and I put it back into the house. Some of the things I did was install central air conditioning. I repainted the porch and the garage. I installed a fence. So all of those things I could deduct as repairs or maintenance to the house so that it kept reducing my tax liability. So that's one way to do it, is that if you are starting to make some really good profits on the house, take it and put it into the house so that when you do sell the house or, down the line, the property just becomes nicer and nicer versus wear and tear and the guests are starting to wear it down a bit. Just circle the money back into it. So that's a little sneaky way to do that. And that goes along with the maintenance and supplies that are on this list: cleaning, landscaping, property management. We touched on that quite a bit already. The supplies as well, they do get worn down, especially if you rent a lot. So you have to be prepared to replace linens, any sort of house supplies, and other amenities as well. So setting money aside to do that is important. It might be something that at the end of a high season, like Jason may go in September, stay there for a while and see what needs to be replaced. The other one is insurance. As we mentioned, it's important to have insurance. A lot of companies will have these riders now, but it could, depending on the type of property and the type of insurance you're looking for, you have to expect that your insurance costs could possibly double per year. And the last one is service fees. Not really a hidden cost, as Airbnb is pretty upfront about it, but there's a 3% fee that you pay on each booking. So they'll take it right off the top. You can deduct that on your tax return, but if they're paying for it, they pay a 3% and you pay 3%. So one of the things you can do on the Airbnb app, you can add the cost for a security deposit, and you can also add things like cleaning fees. So I didn't start doing that, but once I started hiring a cleaning service, some people charge $300 for a cleaning fee. Depending on where they are, it can be quite expensive on the size of the house. So you make the guest pay it. So pass it on down, trickle down fees.
I agree with that. When we talk about your pricing strategy, Airbnb actually, part of your setup of your hosting, they ask, do you want to add in cleaning fees or these other things? Pass that on to the renter. So to the question that came in, do you budget for certain things? Yes, for certain things you do, but don't budget into the cleaning. And we provide a linen service as well. And that, again, in Ocean City, there's linen services that will drop off and pick up, but we pass that on directly. So if I'm just going to use round, an odd number, if we are charging $400 a night and the cleaning and we got to have a cleaner, we got to have linens, it's actually for one night stay. If you were only staying one night, it's $400 plus the cleaning of say $150 and the linens of say $150. It's a $700 stay for one night. Now, obviously, we don't do those. We do week-long rentals, but you're passing those on certainly. In your pricing, can you add in things like the landscaping and the insurance cost? Sure, factor that into what you're charging a night to some extent. But that's where that price, getting a good handle on what others are charging, or the AirDNA service, so that you're not trying to add all this in and then all of a sudden, I am way outpriced and I'm not getting any rentals anyway.
Absolutely. But one of the most important things is to have fun with it. Airbnb can be a really fun thing. And while it can be a lot of work, it's really cool. It's a cool platform. You get to meet or talk to some cool people. some fun stories for me is essentially that I was a pet friendly home. And so I often saw a lot of pictures of dogs. I even had one guest ask, they had a French bulldog like I do, and asked if I would come over and have a play date with their French bulldog. So, it can be a really fun thing. If you rent out just a room, it's a great way to meet other people and talk to people from around the world. So have some fun with it. And Jason, I told you to come up with a fun story for the end of the presentation. Did you think of one?
I did. I want to just a couple of other things to mention real quick. We had talked a little bit about local laws, local rules. That is so important. Quick story in terms of taxes and fees. Airbnb will collect some local taxes for you. And so you just have to look that up. It's on the Airbnb website. Two things that we had to do. One, we had to get a rental license through Ocean City. And so you really kind of have to know your local ordinances. We also have a room tax filing with the county that Ocean City fits in, and Airbnb does not collect that. So before you jump in, again, it's a lot of research. It is a ton of fun, as you said, Kelly. And I will tell you that, one of my my fun story for now is, again, we are trying to build this as a story timeline of our travels and where we've been. We think we've been to some cool places that maybe we take for granted. Certainly, we don't own a place on Cuco Lake, but I think, local people would say, oh, the Finger Lakes are wonderful, right? So we try to rent for week-long stays, but we had someone request a shorter stay, and the story was wonderful. It was, they had never seen the Atlantic Ocean before, and we were able to provide that for them, and we sent some additional recommendation to them. There was a restaurant in Ocean City that both my wife and I worked at called Hooper's Crab House, and the story we got back was, this is wonderful. You should buy a bunch of these and host us all the time, type of thing. So, have fun with it, share your local flavor. That's why people are renting on Airbnb, is they don't want the hotel feel. They want to feel at home, and they want to get a sense of what it's like to be there and live there. So it's been good for us. We've really enjoyed it, and hope we can provide those experiences to more people.
Yeah, it can be really fun. If you have any questions, again, Jason and I both have personal experience with this, and we're happy to walk through it with you or answer any other questions that you guys may have. Our email addresses are on the screen there. You can also call the main office phone number. Other than that, we like to direct you to our website and our Facebook page, where we have some great blogs. We have a great, relatively new podcast that's getting a lot of attraction. So some fun things coming up with JGUA. So just check your emails for the newsletters and keep on top of things. We love doing these presentations for you.